Sarah burst through the conference room doors, her heart pounding, only to find the board of directors in heated argument with a man she'd never seen before. His sharp suit screamed Wall Street, and his cold smile made her blood run cold. "Ah, Mrs. Kang," he said in perfect English. "I'm Marcus Chern, and I've just purchased 40% of Kang Corporation shares. Effective immediately, I'm proposing a vote to remove your husband as CEO and you as VP. Nothing personal, just business." Sarah's world tilted. She had 10 minutes to save everything she'd fought for. The office table was already set, with the other board members seated. When Sarah walked in, Minji's expression briefly darkened with something unpleasant before she quickly masked it behind a calm, professional composure. Sarah took her seat, Mi-sun beside her. Every eye in the room was on her, judging, waiting, hungry for her failure. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. Thank you. "Let's begin," the grandmother said, her voice cutting through the whispers. "I have other matters to attend to this morning. Mr. Zhang, present your findings." The head of security, Mr. Zhang, stood and connected his laptop to the presentation screen. Sarah's stomach churned as images appeared, screenshots of file access logs, timestamps, her login credentials highlighted in red. As you can see, Mr. Zhang began in Korean. Confidential files were accessed using Mrs. Kang's credentials on March 15th at 1:15 p.m. These files contained sensitive information about our merger with Day One Industries, including pricing strategies and proprietary technology assessments. The files were downloaded to an external USB device. Murmurs rippled through the room. Sarah kept her expression calm, even as her heart hammered. However, Mr. Zhang continued, and Sarah's head snapped up at his tone. "Our investigation has revealed several inconsistencies." Director Choi's satisfied expression faltered slightly. "The access patterns do not match Mrs. Kang's typical usage. She types at 93 words per minute on average and uses keyboard shortcuts extensively. The person who accessed these files typed at 42 words per minute and used mouse navigation exclusively." Mr. Zhang pulled up a comparison chart. Additionally, Mrs. Kang was documented having lunch in the executive cafeteria with Director Yuna at the time of the breach. Security footage confirms this. Director Yuna nodded from his seat across the table. "Mrs. Kang joined me at approximately 12:50 p.m. and remained until 1:30 p.m. We discussed her excellent work on the merger analysis." Sarah felt a rush of gratitude toward the older man. He was providing her alibi, publicly supporting her in a room full of people who wanted her gone. "So, if it wasn't Mrs. Kang," one of the other VPs asked, "then who accessed her computer?" "That's what the new evidence reveals," Mr. Zhang said. He clicked to the next slide, and Sarah's breath caught. It was security footage from the hallway outside her office, footage that shouldn't exist because the cameras had been disabled. "Yesterday, we discovered that our primary security cameras on the executive floor had been temporarily disabled from 12:50 to 1:30 p.m. on the day of the breach. However, we recently installed a backup camera system that's not connected to the main network." These cameras continued recording. The screen showed grainy but clear footage of Minji walking down the hallway, glancing around nervously, then using a key card to enter Sarah's office. 18 minutes later, she emerged, tucking something, probably the USB drive, into her pocket. The room erupted. Executives talking over each other, some shocked, some defensive. Minji's face went sheet white. She backed toward the door, but 2 security guards stepped in front of it. This is a mistake," Minji stammered in Korean. "I was just delivering files to Mrs. Kang. I'm Mr. Kang's secretary. I have access to all executive offices." "Then why did you disable the main security cameras first?" Mr. Zhang asked. He pulled up more footage, this one showing Minji in the security room, speaking with a guard. "This is from 12:40 p.m. You told the security guard that Mr. Kang had ordered a system maintenance check." The guard disabled the cameras on your authority, but Mr. Kang gave no such order. Mi-sun's voice was ice. I certainly did not. Furthermore, Mr. Jong continued, the USB device used to download the files has a unique identifier that matches a drive registered to you, Ms. Choi. We found it in your desk this morning. Minji looked like she might faint. I can explain. Don't bother, Sarah said, speaking for the first time. She stood up, pulling out her own laptop. I can explain for you. You framed me because you're in love with my husband and you couldn't stand that he chose me. And you didn't do it alone. Sarah connected her laptop to the presentation system, overriding Mr. Jong's display. This is key card access data from that day. Minji entered my office at 1:05 p.m. But look at this. At 12:55 p.m., Executive Director Choi's key card was used to access the security office. She was there when the cameras were disabled. Director Choi stood abruptly. That proves nothing. My key card could have been stolen. Could it? Sarah pulled up the next file. This is the executive calendar. You had a meeting scheduled on my floor at 1 p.m. You were in the building on my floor at the exact time the cameras went down and Minji accessed my office. And this. Sarah pulled up bank records, her hands steady despite her racing heart. Shows a payment of 5 million won from your account to the security guard who disabled the cameras. Payment made the day after the breach. The room fell silent. Director Choi's face cycled through emotions, shock, anger, calculation. Finally, she settled on indignation. Where did you get my private bank records? That's illegal access of personal information. You're a criminal hacking into. I didn't hack anything, Sarah interrupted smoothly. I requested financial disclosure records from our compliance department. All executives above a certain level are required to report large financial transactions for anti-corruption purposes. Your payment to the security guard was flagged by our automated system as suspicious. I simply requested the report. It was a lie, but a believable one. Sarah had indeed hacked Director Choi's bank records, but the compliance report excuse gave her plausible deniability. The grandmother leaned forward, her eyes sharp on Director Choi. Is this true? Did you conspire to frame Mrs. Kang? She doesn't belong here. Director Choi burst out, her composure finally cracking completely. She's an outsider who married her way into a position she has no right to hold. I've given 15 years to this company. 15 years. And she gets VP after 6 months because she fell onto the CEO's car? It's insulting. It's wrong. What's insulting, the grandmother said coldly, is that a senior executive would commit corporate sabotage and frame an innocent colleague rather than compete on merit. Merit. Director Choi laughed bitterly. What merit? She's a translator who got lucky. I have an MBA from Seoul National University. I have 15 years of experience in strategic operations. I've increased our operational efficiency by 30%. But none of that mattered because she's married to Mi-sun. And yet, Director Yoon spoke up, his quiet voice carrying weight. In 6 months, Mrs. Kang has identified the hidden debt in the Day One merger, caught vendor fraud that was costing us millions, and restructured our supply chain to save 15% on logistics costs. Her work speaks for itself, regardless of who she's married to. She's black, Minji suddenly said, her voice desperate and ugly. How can we have a black woman representing this company? What will our clients think? What will the board think? She doesn't understand our culture. She'll never understand. She doesn't belong in Korea at all. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah felt the words like physical blows, even though she'd heard them whispered for months. Hearing them said out loud, in front of everyone, somehow made them worse. Mi-sun stood, his face a mask of cold fury. You're fired. Both of you. Security, please escort them from the building. You can't fire me, Director Choi said. I'm a senior executive. This requires board approval. I can and I did. Mi-sun's voice could have frozen fire. You committed corporate sabotage, bribery, and conspiracy. You're lucky I'm only firing you and not pressing criminal charges. Get out of my building. The security guards moved forward. Min-ji started crying, begging Mi-sun to reconsider, saying she only did it because she loved him. Director Choi went silently, her face a mask of bitter defeat. As they were escorted out, the room remained silent, everyone processing what had just happened. The grandmother turned her laser focus on Sarah. You knew you were being framed. You investigated on your own. You found evidence through what I suspect were not entirely proper channels. She held up her hand when Sarah started to protest. I don't care about the details. What I care about is results. You protected yourself and protected this company from internal threats. That's exactly what I hired you to do. Sarah felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people. However, the grandmother continued, this incident has revealed a serious problem in our corporate culture. Racism, jealousy, harassment, these things poison a company from within. I will not tolerate it. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each executive. Anyone who has participated in the harassment of Mrs. Kang, anyone who has spread rumors or made her work environment hostile, you have 1 week to confess and apologize. After that, if I discover your involvement through other means, you're terminated immediately. No exceptions. The executives shifted uncomfortably. Sarah could see several of them pale, probably mentally reviewing every comment they'd made, every note they'd left, every time they'd excluded her from conversations. This meeting is over. Everyone back to work. The grandmother stood, then paused and looked at Sarah. Mrs. Kang, please stay. You too, Mi-sun. The room emptied quickly, executives eager to escape. Director Yoon gave Sarah a small nod of support as he left. Finally, only Sarah, Mi-sun, and the grandmother remained. The old woman sat back down, suddenly looking tired. Sit, both of you. They sat. Sarah's hands were shaking in her lap. The adrenaline from the confrontation was wearing off, leaving her exhausted and emotionally raw. How long has this been going on? The grandmother asked. Since I started working here, Sarah admitted. 6 months of harassment, microaggressions, racist comments. I documented everything. She pulled up the file on her laptop. Notes left on my desk. Conversations I overheard. Incidents of my work being stolen or dismissed. It's all here. The grandmother scrolled through the document, her expression growing darker with each page. When she finished, she looked at Sarah with something that might have been respect. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Because I wanted to prove I could handle it. That I deserved my position on merit, not because I needed protection. Sarah's voice cracked. I thought if I was brilliant enough, if my work was good enough, it would stop. But it didn't matter what I did. They'd already decided I didn't belong. They were wrong, the grandmother said simply. Your work has been exceptional. Director Yoon gives me weekly reports on all executive performance. You've consistently ranked in the top 3%. You've saved this company millions of dollars and prevented several major disasters. She leaned forward. But you cannot fight battles alone, Sarah. That's not strength. That's stubbornness. I didn't want to seem weak. Asking for help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. The grandmother's expression softened slightly. I built this company by knowing when to fight alone and when to call in reinforcements. You're brilliant, but you're also young and inexperienced in corporate warfare. Let me teach you. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. Teach me what? How to survive in a world that doesn't want you to succeed. How to turn enemies into allies. How to make your brilliance so undeniable that even racists have to acknowledge it. The grandmother smiled slightly. I was the first woman CEO in our industry. I faced many of the same challenges you're facing now. Different specifics, same underlying hatred of someone who doesn't fit their narrow boxes. I learned how to not just survive, but thrive. I can teach you. Sarah looked at Mi-sun, who nodded encouragingly. Then back at the grandmother. I'd like that. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. My lessons are not gentle. The grandmother stood. Now, both of you go home. You've had a traumatic morning. Rest. Tomorrow we'll begin addressing the cultural rot in this company. But today, you've earned some peace. They left the building together, Mi-sun's arm around Sarah's waist. She leaned into him, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. In the car, the emotions she'd been holding back finally broke free. She cried while Mi-sun drove, great heaving sobs of relief and residual fear and overwhelming exhaustion. I'm sorry, she said when she could finally speak. Sorry I didn't tell you everything. Sorry I tried to handle it alone. Sorry I... Stop apologizing, Mi-sun said gently. He pulled the car over into a quiet side street and turned to face her. Sarah, I'm not angry that you protected yourself. I'm angry that I didn't see what was happening. That I was so focused on the merger I didn't notice my wife was being destroyed. It's not your fault. It's partially my fault. I put you in that position. I knew there would be resistance to your appointment, but I underestimated how vicious people would be. He cupped her face in his hands. I'm sorry. For not protecting you. For not seeing. For not being the partner you needed. You're here now, Sarah whispered. That's what matters. They sat there in the car, holding each other, as Seoul's morning traffic rushed past. Sarah felt something shift between them, some wall that had been building over the past few weeks finally crumbling. They'd both been hiding, her hiding the harassment, him hiding behind work to avoid dealing with his own guilt about putting her in an impossible situation. Let's go home, Mi-sun said finally. Real home. Together. No more separate rooms. No more hiding things from each other. If we're going to make this marriage real, let's actually make it real. Sarah nodded, fresh tears spilling over. Okay. Real. No more pretending. They drove to the penthouse, and for the first time since Sarah started working at Kang Corporation, she felt like she could actually breathe. The battle wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more people who resented her, more obstacles to overcome. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had Mi-sun, the grandmother's support, Director Yoon's quiet alliance, and even Mi-kyung's secret assistance. More importantly, she had proof of her own strength. She'd faced down her enemies and won. Not by running, not by hiding, but by being smart and strategic and refusing to let them destroy her. In the penthouse, Mi-sun made them both coffee while Sarah changed into comfortable clothes. When she came out of the bedroom, he was standing on the balcony. The same balcony where this had all begun 6 months ago. Do you remember that night? Mi-sun asked as she joined him. When you fell onto my car and changed everything? I remember thinking I was going to die. And then I didn't. And then you offered me the most insane deal I'd ever heard. Sarah leaned against the railing. I thought it would be simple. Fake marriage for a year, save Marcus, get out. I never expected to actually fall in love with you. When did you know? Mi-sun asked. When did you realize it was real? Sarah thought about it. There wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 small moments. The way you brought me coffee every morning. How you listened to me talk about Marcus for hours. The way you defended me to your mother even when you were terrified of her. How you looked at me like I was the most interesting person you'd ever met. She smiled. When did you know? The night you stood up to my entire family at that first dinner. You were terrified, but you didn't back down. You defended me to my own mother. Nobody had ever done that before. Mi-sun turned to face her. I think I started falling in love with you that night. I just didn't realize it until later. So, what do we do now? Sarah asked. We've survived your family, Ji-won's conspiracy, and now Director Choi's sabotage. What's next? Now we actually build a life together. Not a fake marriage. Not a business arrangement. A real partnership. Mi-sun pulled her close. We fight the battles that come, but we fight them together. We celebrate the victories together. We face the failures together. We stop hiding from each other and start trusting completely. That's terrifying, Sarah admitted. I know. But you jumped from a 40-story building and survived. You can survive being vulnerable with me. Sarah laughed, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she'd actually laughed? I love you, she said. Really, truly love you. Not because you saved Marcus, though I'll always be grateful for that, but because you're kind and smart and you see me as a whole person, not just a color or a nationality or a position. I love you too, Mi-sun said. And I'm going to spend the rest of our marriage proving it. Starting now. He kissed her, and it felt different from all their previous kisses. Not desperate or strategic or part of a performance. Just two people who loved each other, finally honest about their feelings, finally ready to build something real. They spent the day together, talking about everything they'd been hiding. Sarah told him more about her hacking days, about the rush of breaking into secure systems, about the guilt and shame when she got caught. Mi-sun told her about growing up with parents who saw him as an asset rather than a son, about the crushing pressure of being the Kang heir, about his own battles with depression and anxiety that he'd hidden behind a perfect facade. They talked about Marcus, about bringing him to Korea for a visit. They talked about Sarah's career, about whether she wanted to stay at Kang Corporation or eventually move to something else. They talked about children, about whether they wanted them, and when. They talked about the future, not as something to survive, but as something to build together. As evening fell, Sarah's phone rang. It was Marcus, his face lighting up the screen as she answered the video call. Aunt Sarah, guess what? I made the travel soccer team. We're going to play in a tournament in New York. Sarah felt tears prickle her eyes. Her nephew, healthy and happy and thriving. This is what she jumped for. This is what made everything worth it. That's amazing, baby. I'm so proud of you. When are you coming to visit? I miss you. Soon, Sarah promised. And maybe you can come visit me in Korea? I want you to meet someone very important to me. Mi-sun moved into view of the camera, wrapping his arm around Sarah's shoulders. Marcus. I'm Mi-sun. Your aunt has told me so much about you. Marcus's eyes went wide. Are you Aunt Sarah's husband? The one who helped me get my surgery? That's me, Mi-sun said, smiling. Thank you, Marcus said, suddenly serious. Thank you for saving my life. I'm going to pay you back when I grow up. I'm going to be a doctor and help other kids like me. Sarah saw tears in Mi-sun's eyes. You don't have to pay me back, Marcus. Just live your best life. That's payment enough. They talked for another 20 minutes, Marcus excitedly describing his soccer team, his friends, his school. When they finally hung up, Sarah felt more complete than she had in months. Her nephew was safe. Her marriage was real. She'd survived the worst her enemies could throw at her. He's wonderful, Mi-sun said. I can see why you love him so much. He's everything, Sarah agreed. My whole reason for being here. For surviving. For fighting. And now? Mi-sun asked. What are you fighting for now? Sarah thought about it. Now I'm fighting for us. For the life we're building. For the family we might have someday. For the chance to prove that love can cross any boundary. Cultural, racial, circumstantial. We started as a business deal, but we're ending as something real. That's worth fighting for. It is, Mi-sun agreed. And Sarah? Tomorrow, when we go back to work and face whatever comes next, just remember, you're not alone anymore. You never have to be alone again. Sarah leaned into him, feeling safe for the first time in months. The battles would continue. There would be more obstacles, more people who resented her success, more challenges to overcome. But she was ready. She had tools now, the grandmother's mentorship, Director Yoon's support, Mi-sun's love, and most importantly, her own proven strength. She'd fallen from a building and survived. She'd survived racism and sabotage and corporate warfare. She could survive anything. The next morning, Sarah walked into Kang Corporation with her head high. Employees stared as she passed, but the whispers had changed. Instead of mockery, she heard uncertainty,
Fear.
respect. Director Choi's very public firing had sent a clear message: Sarah was not to be trifled with. In her office, Sarah found a dozen emails of apology. Employees confessing to participating in her harassment, begging for forgiveness. Some sounded genuine. Others sounded terrified of being fired. Sarah responded to each one professionally, accepting the apologies, but making clear that trust had to be rebuilt through actions, not words. Mi-kyung appeared in her doorway mid-morning, a shy smile on her face. "I heard what happened yesterday. You were brilliant. I couldn't have done it without your help," Sarah said. "Thank you. For everything. For being willing to risk your own position to help me. It was the right thing to do."
Mi-kyung hesitated.
"I was wondering if you might need an assistant? Someone to help manage your workload? I've been an analyst for 3 years, and I'm ready for new challenges." Sarah smiled. "I'd like that very much. Welcome to the team, Mi-kyung." Over the next few weeks, things slowly changed at Kang Corporation. Not completely. Old prejudices didn't disappear overnight. But the overt harassment stopped. People were careful around Sarah now, treating her with the professional respect her position demanded. Some even began to genuinely warm to her, impressed by her work and her resilience. The grandmother kept her promise, taking Sarah under her wing. They met for lunch once a week, the old woman teaching Sarah the subtle arts of corporate politics, how to build alliances, how to identify threats before they materialized. Sarah soaked up the knowledge, finally having a mentor who understood what it meant to be an outsider fighting for acceptance. And through it all, Sarah's marriage to Mi-sun deepened. They fell asleep together every night, talking about their days, sharing their fears and dreams. They made love with increasing frequency, learning each other's bodies, building intimacy that went far beyond physical pleasure. They became partners in the truest sense, facing challenges together, celebrating victories together, supporting each other through failures. 6 months after the confrontation with Director Choi, Sarah stood in front of the board of directors, presenting her annual report. Her hands were steady, her voice confident. She'd proven herself beyond any doubt. The company's profits were up 15%, largely due to initiatives she'd spearheaded. She'd built a reputation as the executive you wanted on your team, the one who saw solutions others missed. As she finished her presentation, the board members applauded. Real applause, not the polite courtesy she'd received in her first months. She'd earned this. Not because of who she married, but because of who she was. That evening, Sarah and Mi-sun hosted dinner at their penthouse. Marcus was visiting from America, bouncing with excitement as he explored their home. Director Yuna was there, along with Mi-kyung and several other executives who'd become genuine friends. Even the grandmother attended, smiling as she watched Marcus demonstrate his soccer skills on the balcony. Sarah stood in the kitchen, taking in the scene. This was her life now. Not perfect, still complicated, still challenging. But real.
Honest.
Full of people who saw her for who she truly was and loved her anyway. Mi-sun came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he asked. "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "But also happy. Is it possible to be both?" "I think that's just called being alive." Mi-sun kissed her temple. "And you're very good at being alive, Sarah Kang. Better than anyone I know." Sarah turned in his arms and kissed him properly, not caring who saw. Because this was her life. Her love. Her hard-won victory. She'd jumped from a building to save her nephew. She'd married a stranger to survive. And somehow, impossibly, she'd found real love in the midst of chaos. The future was uncertain. There would be more battles, more obstacles, more people who questioned her right to be here. But Sarah was ready. She had strength. She had love. She had people who believed in her. And most importantly, she believed in herself. She'd survived the fall. Everything after that was just details. The next day, Sarah had just finished reviewing the quarterly projections with Mi-sun and was gathering her files when his office door opened without a knock. His assistant looked flustered, trailing behind a woman who had simply walked past her. The woman who entered was breathtaking, tall, elegant, with the kind of beauty that made people stop and stare. She wore a crimson Chanel suit that screamed power and money. Her smile was warm and charming as her eyes landed on Sarah.
Oh.
I'm so sorry, I didn't realize Mi-sun had someone with him. The woman's Korean was perfect, her tone apologetic but confident. You must be Sarah. I'm Choi Yuna, Mi-sun, and I are old friends from university. Business partners over the years. Sarah noticed Mi-sun had gone very still, his jaw tight. It's nice to meet you, Sarah said politely, though something in her gut twisted. The pleasure is mine. Mi-sun has told me so much about you. Well, back when we used to keep in regular touch. Yuna's smile was dazzling. I have to say, you're even more lovely than I imagined. Mi-sun always had impeccable taste. There was something about the way she said it, intimate, possessive, that made Sarah's instincts flare. But Yuna's demeanor was so friendly, so open. I was actually just leaving, Sarah said, glancing at Mi-sun, whose expression was unreadable. Perfect timing then. I won't keep you. Yuna stepped aside gracefully. I hope we can have lunch while I'm in Seoul. I'd love to get to know you better. Any woman who finally got Mi-sun to settle down must be extraordinary. Sarah felt the subtle dismissal beneath the compliment. She looked at Mi-sun one more time, searching his face. I'll see you later. He nodded tightly. I'll call you when I'm done. As Sarah walked out, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The tension in Mi-sun's shoulders. The way he'd barely looked at her. The perfect smile on Yuna's face that didn't quite reach her eyes. She closed the door behind her and headed down the hallway, but that knot in her stomach only grew tighter. Inside the office, the atmosphere changed the instant the door clicked shut. Yuna's warm smile vanished like it had never existed. She turned to face Mi-sun, her expression cold and calculating as she walked slowly toward his desk. She's lovely, Yuna said, her voice stripped of its earlier sweetness. So trusting. So naive. I can see why you chose her. She's nothing like me. Mi-sun's hands clenched at his sides. What do you want, Yuna? What I've always wanted, darling. She perched on the edge of his desk, crossing her legs deliberately.
You.
But I'm willing to be reasonable this time. She pulled out her phone, scrolling casually before holding it up. On the screen was a photo of Mi-sun and Yuna, clearly intimate, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. The date stamp made his blood run cold. 6 months ago. Paris, Yuna said, her smile razor-sharp. The business conference you told your sweet wife was so boring you barely left your hotel room. Remember, darling? We barely left the hotel room for entirely different reasons. That photo is taken out of context, Mi-sun said, but his voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. Is it? Yuna tucked the phone away. I have 47 more just like it. And videos. Such wonderful videos. She stood, walking around his desk until she was close enough that he could smell her perfume, the same one she'd worn 5 years ago when they were engaged. But I'm not here to destroy your little fairy tale, Mi-sun. I'm here to make a business proposition. I'm not interested in anything You'll want to hear this. Her voice dropped, dangerous and cold. Here's what's going to happen. You and I are going to resume our relationship. I'll be your mistress, discreet, of course. Your wife can keep her title, keep her position here, keep playing house. All I want is what's mine. You. 3 nights a week, and a seat on Kang Corporation's board. Mi-sun's jaw clenched. Absolutely not. Then I'll release everything I have to the media. Yuna's eyes glittered with malice. And trust me, darling, I have so much more than photos. I know about Sarah's criminal record. Yes, I did my research on your precious wife. I know about the bribe doctors, the corporate sabotage you swept under the rug, the offshore accounts. I know everything. She walked to the door, her heels clicking against the floor. With her hand on the handle, she paused and looked back. Yuna was Mi-sun's ex-fiancée. They had built the business together back when Mi-sun was still young and finding his footing in the business world. She was there, backing him up, ensuring he didn't fail. She owned over 40% of the company's shares and was one of the most prominent shareholders in the corporation. Everyone knew her name, respected her influence, but no one knew that she and Mi-sun had been having an affair back then, an affair that had continued in secret even after their engagement ended. 5 years ago, they parted ways when Mi-sun refused to merge his profits and new business ventures into her own holdings. It was a bitter separation, professional and personal wounds that had never fully healed. But 6 months ago, they met again. And now, the old wound was resurfacing, festering with unresolved feelings, unfinished business, and dangerous secrets. This time, Mi-sun would have to figure out how to deal with this mess by himself, before it destroyed everything he'd built, including his marriage to Sarah. You have 72 hours to decide. Me as your mistress, or complete destruction for you, your wife, and this entire company. Choose wisely, Mi-sun. You know I always get what I want. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Mi-sun stood frozen in his office, staring at the space where she'd been. His hands were shaking. The walls seemed to be closing in. Everything he'd built, everything he'd fought for, his marriage to Sarah, all of it was about to come crashing down. And the worst part? That photo from Paris. It wasn't entirely out of context. He'd been weak, lonely, and Yuna had been there. Nothing had happened, not really, but the optics were damning. And if Sarah saw those photos... His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Asterisk clock's ticking, darling. 71 hours, 47 minutes. Asterisk. Mi-sun sank into his chair, his head in his hands. Mi-sun sat there for a long moment, his breathing shallow, his mind racing through every possible scenario. Each one ended in disaster. Yuna wasn't bluffing, she never bluffed. She had the evidence, the shares, the power. And she was ruthless enough to use all of it. His hands were still shaking as he reached for his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and pressed call on a name he hadn't dialed in months, Jae-hyun. His oldest friend, his most trusted confidant from their university days. The only person who knew the full history between him and Yuna. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Mi-sun? It's been a while. What's? I need your help. Mi-sun's voice was tight, urgent. There's a problem. A serious one. There was a pause. Jae-hyun's tone shifted immediately. All business. What happened? Yuna's back. Just saying her name out loud made his chest constrict. She showed up at my office today. She's making threats about Paris, about the company, about everything. She has photos, evidence. She wants. He couldn't finish the sentence.
Jesus.
What does she want?
Me.
3 nights a week. A seat on the board. Control. Mi-sun rubbed his face with his free hand. She gave me 72 hours, and if I don't agree, she'll release everything to the media and to Sarah. Sarah doesn't know about.
No.
She doesn't know anything. Mi-sun's voice cracked slightly. And she can't find out. Not like this. Not from Yuna. I need you to help me figure this out. Meet me tomorrow morning, early, before the office opens. The usual place. I'll be there. And Mi-sun? Don't do anything stupid. Don't meet with Yuna alone. I won't, Mi-sun lied. I'll see you tomorrow. He ended the call just as he heard footsteps approaching his office. He quickly composed himself, straightening in his chair and forcing his expression into something neutral. The door opened, and Sarah stepped in. Hey, she said, her smile tentative. Is everything okay? You looked tense earlier. Mi-sun's heart clenched. She was so beautiful, so trusting. The guilt nearly choked him. He forced a smile that he hoped looked genuine. Everything's fine. Just some unexpected business. Sarah moved closer, studying his face. Who was that woman?
Yuna?
Just an old friend, Mi-sun said smoothly, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. We knew each other back in university. She's in the country for a business conference and thought she'd stop by to say hello. Nothing important. Sarah seemed to relax slightly. She seemed nice. Very polished. She's always been like that. All business. Mi-sun stood and walked around his desk, putting his hands on Sarah's shoulders. How about we have dinner at home tonight? I'll leave early. We can cook together. Sarah's smile brightened. I'd like that. Good. He kissed her forehead, hating himself for the deception. I just have a few things to finish up here. I'll meet you at home around 7. Perfect. Sarah squeezed his hand and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. Mi-sun? His heart stopped. Yes, I love you. The words hit him like a physical blow. I love you too, he said, and meant it with every broken piece of his soul. When she left, Mi-sun exhaled slowly and returned to his desk. Almost immediately, his phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number ****, want to discuss this? Maybe negotiate? Meet me at the Basel Hotel. Room 1847. Come alone. Y asterisco. Mi-sun stared at the message. Jae-hyun's warning echoed in his head. Don't meet with Yuna alone, but he couldn't wait until tomorrow. He couldn't let this hang over him for another sleepless night. He needed to face her, to understand exactly what she wanted, to find some way out of this nightmare. He grabbed his car keys and coat. 20 minutes later, he was standing outside room 1847 at the Basel Hotel, one of Seoul's most exclusive and discreet establishments. The kind of place where privacy was guaranteed and questions weren't asked. He knocked once. Come in, Yuna's voice called from inside. It's open. Mi-sun pushed the door open and stepped into the suite. It was lavish, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture, mood lighting. Yuna stood by the window with a glass of wine in her hand, still wearing that crimson suit. She'd let her hair down, and it cascaded over her shoulders. She turned when he entered, and a slow smile curved her lips. You came. I wasn't sure you would. Mi-sun closed the door behind him, his jaw tight with anger. Let's get one thing straight, Yuna. I'm not here to negotiate anything that involves me being your... He couldn't even say the word. I'm here to tell you to back off. Whatever you think you have on me, whatever game you're playing, it ends now. Yuna's smile didn't falter. She could see the anger radiating from him, the tension in every line of his body. And it only seemed to amuse her. Oh, darling, she said softly, setting down her wine glass. You came all the way here to threaten me? How romantic. She walked toward him slowly, deliberately. But we both know you're not in a position to make threats. I hold all the cards. I always have. What do you really want, Yuna? Mi-sun demanded, his voice hard. Is this really about me? About us? Or is this about revenge because I wouldn't give you what you wanted 5 years ago? Her eyes flashed with something dark. Maybe it's both. She stopped just inches from him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, see the glitter of malice in her eyes. You left me, Mi-sun. After everything I did for you, after I built you into the man you are today, you threw me away like I was nothing, like our history meant nothing. Her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. So yes, maybe I want revenge. Maybe I want to watch you squirm. Or maybe... She reached up, trailing one finger down his thigh. Maybe I just want what was always mine. Mi-sun grabbed her wrist, stopping her. I was never yours. And I never will be. Yuna's smile turned predatory.
We'll see about that.
70 hours left, darling.
Tick-tock.
She pulled her wrist free and walked back to the window, dismissing him like he was a servant who'd overstayed his welcome. Mi-sun stood there for a moment, fury and helplessness warring inside him. Then he turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him. As he drove home through the Seoul night, his hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Yuna had him trapped, and they both knew it. But he'd be damned if he let her destroy his marriage, his life, everything he'd built. He just had to figure out how to stop her. Before the clock ran out, Mi-sun left the hotel room without another word. There was nothing he could say, no argument he could make. The guilt was already eating him alive, and Yuna knew it. She could see it in his eyes, in the way his shoulders sagged as he walked out. She had won this round, and they both knew it. The drive home was a blur. His mind raced through scenarios, possibilities, escape routes, but every path led to the same dead end. Yuna had him cornered. When he finally arrived home, Sarah was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The sight of her, so peaceful, so innocent of the storm brewing around them, made his chest tighten with guilt and fear. "You're home," she said, smiling as she turned to him. "I thought you'd be later. I'm making your favorite. I finished early." He forced a smile, kissing her cheek. "Smells good." He moved through the evening on autopilot, playing the role of the loving husband, laughing at Sarah's stories about her day, complimenting her cooking, pretending everything was normal. But inside, he was burning, fear, anger, and guilt churning in his gut like acid. His phone buzzed. Then again. And again. "Yuna asterisk, missing me already, darling?" "Yuna asterisk asterisk, I hope you're not overthinking this." "The answer is simple. Give me what I want, asterisk." "Yuna asterisk, or maybe you'd prefer option 2? "Yuna asterisk asterisk, pay me $15 billion, resign from Kong Corporation, and disappear from my life forever." "Your choice, asterisk." Mi-sun stared at the message. $15 billion. That was nearly the entire valuation of his company. Everything he'd built, every asset he owned liquidated. It would destroy him financially. And resigning? That would hand Yuna complete control of the empire they'd built together. His phone buzzed again. "Yuna asterisk asterisk, I know what you're thinking. How can she ask for so much?" "Because, darling, that's what you're worth to me. That's what it will cost for me to walk away and let you keep your little fairy tale life. Asterisk." "Yuna asterisk asterisk, but we both know you can't afford it. So really, there's only one option."
Me.
3 nights a week. It's not so bad, is it? We were good together once. Asterisk. Yuna asterisk asterisk, think about it. 67 hours left. Asterisk. Another buzz. "Yuna asterisk asterisk, sweet dreams, Mi-sun. Give my regards to Sarah." Face blowing a kiss, asterisk. "Mi-sun?" Sarah's voice cut through his thoughts. "Your phone keeps going off. It's kinda disturbing. Is everything okay?" He looked up to find her watching him from across the living room, concern etched on her face. He quickly silenced his phone and set it face down on the coffee table. "Just some international clients," he lied smoothly. "Time zone differences. I'll put it on silent." Sarah nodded, seemingly satisfied, and returned to her book. But the messages kept coming. He could feel the phone vibrating silently against the table. Each buzz was like a knife twisting deeper into his gut. Later that night, Mi-sun lay in bed beside Sarah, staring at the ceiling. Sarah's breathing had evened out an hour ago. She was sound asleep, curled on her side, peaceful and trusting. But Mi-sun couldn't close his eyes. Every time he did, he saw Yuna's predatory smile, heard her voice, felt the walls closing in. $15 billion or become her plaything. Those were his options. Except they weren't. Not really. Mi-sun's jaw clenched as a darker thought crept into his mind. A thought he'd buried 7 years ago when he'd walked away from that life. When he'd decided to go legitimate, to build something clean, something real. Before Kong Corporation, before the business empire, before any of this, Mi-sun had been someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Someone feared. He had controlled the entire Seoul underworld. Organized crime, underground networks, deals made in shadows and sealed with blood. He'd been a mafia boss, ruthless and efficient, and he'd been good at it. Too good. But he'd wanted out. Wanted to build something that wouldn't require looking over his shoulder every day. So he pivoted, used his connections, his money, his strategic mind to launch himself into the legitimate business world. He'd buried that past so deep that most days, even he forgot it existed. But Yuna? Yuna was forcing his hand. If he couldn't pay her, if he couldn't give her what she wanted, then there was only one other option. Eliminate her. The thought should have horrified him, should have made him recoil. But instead, he felt a cold, familiar calm settle over him. The same calm he used to feel before a hit, before a deal, before handling a problem that couldn't be solved through negotiation. Yuna wasn't just a business threat. She was a trained fighter, kung fu and karate, skills she'd honed during her years training in China. He'd seen her in action once, years ago, when a rival businessman had tried to physically intimidate her. She'd put the man in the hospital with 3 broken ribs and a shattered jaw. In the business world, no one had ever defeated her. She was too smart, too connected, too ruthless. But Mi-sun had defeated people like her before. In his old life, when the rules were different. He turned his head slightly, looking at Sarah's peaceful face in the darkness. She deserved better than this. Better than him. But he couldn't lose her. Wouldn't lose her. Which meant Yuna had to go. Not through legal channels. Not through business maneuvering. She was too entrenched, too protected by her shares and her connections.
No.
If he was going to handle this, he'd have to do it the old way. The way he'd sworn he'd never return to. Mi-sun carefully slipped out of bed, moving silently so as not to wake Sarah. He walked to his home office and closed the door. Then he opened a locked drawer in his desk, one Sarah didn't even know existed. Inside was a burner phone he'd kept for emergencies, and a small black book filled with names and numbers of people from his past. People who owed him favors. People who could make problems disappear. His hand hovered over the phone. Was he really going to do this? Cross back over that line he'd sworn never to cross again? His phone, his regular phone, buzzed on the desk. Another message from Yuna. Yuna ***, can't sleep? Neither can I. I'm thinking about Paris. About how good we were together. About how good we'll be again. 64 hours, darling. Mi-sun's jaw set. His hand closed around the burner phone.
Yes.
He was going to do this. Because Yuna had made a fatal mistake. She thought she knew him. Thought she knew what he was capable of. But she only knew the businessman, the legitimate entrepreneur, the man who played by society's rules. She'd never met the man he used to be. And if she pushed him far enough, she was about to find out that some parts of your past never really die. They just wait.
Quietly.
In the dark. Until you need them again. With her? Dear listeners, thank you so much for staying until the end of this incredible journey. Did you love Sarah's transformation from a woman ready to give up to a woman ready to fight? Drop a comment below telling me your favorite moment from this story. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We have so many more dramatic Korean love stories coming your way. Part 5 will dive even deeper into Sarah and Mi-sun's evolving relationship as they face new challenges together. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Thank you for listening, and until next time, remember, sometimes the biggest falls lead to the highest rises.